All right, welcome everybody to Cycle Jerks Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Stewart, coming to you today from the podcast studio, aka my garage. Got kicked out of the house, so I guess I'm a little loud on these things in these early morning sessions. So yeah, back in the podcast studio, and joined as always by my co-host Chris Padavana. Chris, how you doing?
Good. Good morning, everybody.
Yep. Good morning. And today's special guest to both Chris and I, Thierry Attias, is somebody that we've both known a long time, and right now he's the commercial developer,
Commercial.
brand manager of Decathlon
The,
USA.
the titles of French companies don't really align with U.S. companies sometimes. So essentially, in U.S. parlance, I would be a brand manager, and there I'm a commercial director of cycling.
Man,
Nice. Oh,
I
wow.
know
It's a mouthful, and it's just a title.
it sounds really important and something really befitting
Right.
of someone like
Exactly.
yourself. So
You're killing me. You're killing me.
awesome. Well, Thierry, we had Steve Westover on the podcast, a few episodes ago, and your name came up, and I was just like,
Uh-oh.
oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of a lot of the good times we had with Giant and the United Healthcare, and get when you were getting Momentum Sports going in those early years. That was an interesting time just to be sitting on the sidelines. What was the inspiration to get that going?
That's interesting. I've never been a bike racer like both of you guys. I kind of came at it from more of a business perspective. If you own a bike shop, Chris, you know firsthand, you get groups of guys that are loyal clients that become a club, and they want you to sponsor them to race. So 50 other guys in colored jerseys with this other logos can look at them race, and you could pay for their stuff and their bikes and their entry fees. Not a
Yeah.
great business model, but anyway. But what you do as a business owner is you kind of flick your books open and go, oh yeah, Joe and Bob have spent a lot of money at my store. Yeah, I could invest a little money in supporting them and give back a little bit to the community. So I had this group of about 5 guys came into the store, and they're like, "Hey, Thierry, we were starting a bike club, or a bike racing team. We want you to sponsor us, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to go have, at the time it was Volet, make some jerseys. It takes 6 weeks to make jerseys, guys. So we'll get jerseys and bibs and all this stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds great. So I invest about $5,000 in making jerseys and bibs and all this other stuff. I know it's a long story, but it'll come around, I promise. And so I get the jerseys, the logos, and everything else. Everything's there. 1 week after they first came in, they go, "Hey, are the jerseys here yet? We're ready to race." And I'm like, "No, man. I said it was 6 weeks. It takes them because at the time, everything was sublimated. It took a while to make. Blah 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 blah." So they're like, "Oh," they left kind of bummed out. All right. I figured they got the message. 6 weeks is 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Second week comes around. They come around again. Are the jerseys here yet? And I was like, no, jerseys. You got 4 more weeks to go, man.
Yeah.
And they were like, Thierry, we found another store that's going to sponsor us, and they already have jerseys. And I had already worked out, did this whole thing, and I was like, okay, all right, damn. And
Yeah.
I was a little bent. And so I started talking to a bunch of other pro athletes that used to come through the store. And I was like, I'm kind of bummed about this. What does it take to start a pro cycling team? Screw this local stuff.
Yeah.
And they kind of explained the strategy. Well, it takes money and it takes athletes. You need the money to get the athletes. You need the athletes to get the money. I said, "Oh, smoke and mirrors. I understand this concept. I can do this."
Yeah.
So I ended up getting I put together a little deck. And as you guys know, as people come through the store, everybody's business. This guy is the CFO here, CMO there. This guy's in charge of this. This guy is, it's this. So basically, I started pitching all my clients that were in decision-making capability. Hey, what do you think? And ironically, Two clients hit at the same time. Said, "Yeah, we're interested in sponsoring a team." The first one was Moosehead Beer, a guy who was like managed all the Moosehead beer.
Oh,
and I was
yeah.
like, yeah, killer. It wasn't a big number. I think if I remember correctly, it's like they were going to give us 50 grand for the year for a pro cycling team. For a club team or something, that would have been a great. But if you were really trying to do a professional team where you had to pay some salaries and whatever, that ain't getting it done.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, a company called that I wasn't really familiar with, called HealthNet, called me and they said, "Hey, would you fly out to Woodland Hills and present to us what your idea is about this cycling team? We think cycling and healthcare would be a good fit." So I flew out to Woodland Hills. I sat in a boardroom and I pitched it and I go, "Hey, great news. The colors are going to be the same and everything. We could be the Moosehead HealthNet team." And they laughed. We can't do beer and health insurance on the same jersey.
Right.
He said, "How much are they giving you?" And I said, 50 grand. He goes, "Well, we'll give you the 50 and what we were going to give you, and we could start the team," which was still, not a big number, right?
Yeah.
So the first year we did that. We called a lot of our existing vendors and said, "Hey, we're starting a cycling team." And they're like, yeah, right, sure. Mavic gave us some wheels, and I think at the time, Look gave us a few frames, and I was working with Min over there, and he gave us some CD shoes too. So we got what we could. We added like a local dentist and a local attorney office, and I think we totally scrounged up around 150 grand. So we had $150,000. And we had a whole bunch of like, hey, if we could potentially get these athletes. And we had a lot of like mid-range athletes, guys that would maybe show up for a regional race like McLean Pacific at the time or whatever, and score a top 10. But that doesn't really move the needle. So we did something that was really kind of unique, and this is what kind of launched the whole team thing. We blew all of our entire wad on one guy, really, and it was Gord Frazier. So, our budget was 150 grand. He got 3/4 of it, and we're going to figure out how to drive our own cars and do the rest. And that was like the best thing we could have done, because all of a sudden, from being a mid-pack something, we were winning 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 races a year. In the second year, we went from a budget of like $150,000 to a budget of $750,000, and we picked up Giant as a sponsor for our bikes. Mike, I know you probably remember that. Working with Steve Westover and stuff. So that was really that was a turning point. We were fortunate also in that at the same time period, the Mercury team had dissolved. So we had all these great American talents, or North American talents, on the market looking for jobs. So we didn't have to pay them a whole bunch. We picked up Scott Moniger. We picked up Mike Sayers was one of our first guys also. Mike Sayers, which he was the heartbeat of the team for many years. And then we had Gord Frazier, we had Chris Weary, Tyler Farah, Greg Henderson, because we ended up merging later that year with what used to be the 7-Up team. John Leishwin, just a whole bunch of people. I think even recruited, was it that year, Adam Craig, who used to do cyclocross and now does rally cars for Giant. We had him doing criteriums in Oregon. It was funny. It was the Wild West. And we were literally driving around in a pickup truck that I had bought. And my business partner's Volvo, which I can't tell you what it looked like at the end of the season. It was in pieces. It was good fun. It was the Wild West in those early years before it was, we were just kind of clawing it out. I was feeding on the side of the road. We couldn't afford soigneurs. I'd call somebody, "Hey, do you know how to do a massage?" And they would be our soigneur for the week. Tour de Beauce. It was just total shoestring, just like any other start a business. You kind of work with what you have, you grow it, you do it, you build it. And as we gained success, we gained revenue. We gained quality, the quality of the athletes. We understood how to do it better. And then so anyway, you got the idea. That's kind of the progression.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I remember, when you started with Giant, and it was really cool to kind of see they made some custom frames, and then because one of the things working for Giant all these years, it's like the marketing thing is something that the company is just always, it hasn't historically been great. And you guys had a deal with Maxis, and like we were getting 2-page spreads in every road magazine. And it was just like, it was just powerful, the impact of it. Everybody riding Giants. It was a Maxis ad, but it was, it could have been a Giant ad for all intents and
Sure.
purposes. It was, so yeah, that was something that was really exciting for me to see as someone who represents a company. And we hadn't really had that type of exposure before, and it was something that happened kind of on a grassroots style level out of my territory. It was just something that was really cool, and I was thankful to be a part of that, on some level.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. I mean, people think that it's all necessarily money or whatever. A lot of the deals we would do behind the scenes weren't necessarily where some of the agreements and contracts specified that you had to use all of our other partners. So everybody creates value for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my other deals included OEM deals. So listen, yes, we're talking to 2 or 3 different bike companies. Will you use Maxis? Will you spec Maxis tires on your bikes? That's a big difference. Then I go to Maxis. Hey, if they spec your tires, will you give me this amount instead of this amount? And then we kind of, so there's a lot of interplay among partners or sponsors in a bike team that isn't just evident. It's not just logo on a jersey. It's a lot of backroom stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and at one point, the team ended up with Mark Cavendish, right? Was that?
No, he was never on our team.
Oh, that was post. Oh, right. I'm
Yeah,
confused.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
conflating a couple of different teams together there. Yeah. What
I
am I?
wish that would have been cool.
Right, yeah, that would
Yeah,
be great.
right.
Shit.
Yeah, that 750,000 budget. We keep going.
Again, son, then I owe you money.
Yeah. So how did from year one with the $150,000 budget, and then you said, was it year two? You're at 750? Did it
Yeah, it was
happen
a
that
really big
quickly?
jump. It was good, and then we kind of leveled it out at about $1.5 million a year, kind of to run the program.
Hmm.
And then we were paying salaries to everyone, but we were a continental team or a Division III team,
Yeah.
so we could pay kind of zero to whatever we wanted. And the cost of being a team was not expensive, so you didn't have to sign up for a bio passport program like you do in higher level programs. It was the whole purpose of these Division III teams that we use a lot in the U.S. was like to make it inexpensive and easy and accessible to create feeder teams to feed up to the bigger teams. So so they cut you a lot of slack in terms of requirements and financial mandates and things like that. And we did that all the way through 2000. God, I want to say like 2009 was our last year as a continental team. Then we made the jump to professional continental, which is huge. That's all you do, almost every single thing the same as you would in a world tour team, everything except the salaries are about 15% less. There's the requirements are essentially the same.
Okay.
Wow.
Man,
And it was a
interesting.
big jump.
Yeah. So all this is taking place while you own a bike shop in Oakland. So,
Correct.
and for most people, running a bike shop is it's all they can handle, right?
Yeah.
So to have a successful bike shop operating, running, and then also managing this something that seems like it would be all consuming, right? Trying to work with sponsors, all these different companies, everything. How did you pull that off?
I had really good people working for me, and people I had worked with for a while. So I was able to step away, kind of, and then check in periodically. The team required a lot of travel and a lot of investment and relationship building with a lot of our partners. So I spent a lot of time doing that. But when I was gone, the staff I had did a really good job. I tried not to be gone for more than 2 weeks at a time, and so I could come back and cover payroll or whatever needed to be
Yeah.
done. But by then the shop had been going for already 15 years or so, so it was kind of on autopilot. but I had really good managers and assistant managers and the mechanics that had worked for me for like forever. So I kind of knew what was going on, and it's a small world, a phone call away if there's a problem or an email. So it was pretty easy to do. And then whenever I was in town, my offices, the offices of the team were right either above or next door, depending what year we're talking about, to the bike shop. So when I am in town, it was just like, hey, Thierry, could you come over and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, up and down the stairs. And it was very, very easy, very simple.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
So,
okay.
yeah.
All right. So you started the bike shop. Was it 91? 91. Okay. So, and what was the motivation to get into, like you mentioned, you weren't a racer. So how did it come about?
This is good. Okay. So how did this come about? Short answer is out of spite.
That sounds good.
So that's the short answer. I'm driven by these horrible things, man. Not passion. It's not love for the sport. It's spite. And so I'll tell you what I was doing. I was 26 years old, and I had a girlfriend at the time that was graduating college, and I went to a bunch of different bike shops to buy her a bike. In every bike shop I went into, I wasn't part of the club, or they would just ignore you. I remember going to Missing Link and taking a bike off the stand and starting to roll it towards the door just so I could get someone's attention and answer some questions. I went to Stone Cyclery, and I said I want to buy a bike, and he slid his glasses down his nose, looked over at me, and said, "There are my $300 bikes. Those are my $400 bikes, and these are my $500 bikes." Turned his back on me before I could say another word and walked. And I was like, and having come from a sales and background, working, I thought I could do better, and that was simply it. So. So I had a friend of mine that had worked, ironically, at Stone's. Chris, Mark Munoz. And I said, "Hey, Mark, man, what does it take to open a bike shop?" And so he kind of gave me some ideas. I did a little business plan. I took out 10 grand on a Visa card, at cash advance the Visa card. And I figured, what, if I can't, pay the 18% interest or whatever it was at the time, I got no business being open. And I rented a little spot at South Shore Shopping Center in Alameda, and I opened a bike shop. And just because I wasn't really fulfilled with what I was doing before. I was doing lease negotiations for an advertising agency. Then I went to work for my mother at the time owned a travel agency, and she had me start a corporate travel division. So I did that for about a year, but I knew the financial upside was really limited. So I went with the so I opened the shop, and it was pretty interesting. I tried to fill it up. Buddies of mine helped me paint it. Just everybody rolled up their sleeves and kind of pitched in. It was 1,200 square feet. You had to be open because it was a mall. They had mall hours. You had to be open like 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. So the days were long, 7 days a week. It was brutal. We were trying to do it with 2 people, and then later 3, but it was harsh. And then so first 2 months, everything's great. All your friends, when you first open a business, all your friends come over and they want to support you and kind of buy a little something, check you out, kind of give you the leg up. But after those first 2 months go by, you're kind of on your own. The honeymoon's over, and you better start marketing, advertising, getting new clients, developing business. So that first year was interesting.
Yeah.
But it was fine. We gutted it out.
Right. Yeah, it's funny that you left the travel thing because the financial ceiling was you could see the financial ceiling wasn't where you needed to be. So you thought, well, let me open a bike shop. I'll get rich.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
The classic line, right? How do you make $1 million in the bike business?
Start with 2.
That's right. Sad but true, unfortunately. It is a labor
Yeah,
of love for most. Although there are exceptions, there are
sure.
people that do great and it really works for them. But that's definitely not not the standard for sure. Everybody's kind of, but especially right now, holy smokes. So in
But
this
so
role,
true, like Thierry's point, like out of spite, where you go to these local bike shops and you just feel like you're just not part of this
yeah,
exclusive club, and it's just like, what the fuck, man?
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. I think it's because you have it's mostly young men that are into cycling. It is changing. There's a lot more women getting in the sport, and I think that's great. And
sure.
that, which is great to see with pro cycling even now with women. And there's definitely that's helping the inclusivity feel of the shops. But for the longest time, like when I grew up at the bike shop, there were no women. There were no, none of the shops had, and it was just a bunch of young dudes that were all into technology and going fast. And if you weren't that, and you came in the shop, you got this
All right.
immature athlete, person trying to relate to somebody in their 40s that's, trying to get in shape. It just wasn't working. So I think the industry's come a long way though, for sure.
I agree.
And
I agree 100%.
yeah,
I don't think you could afford to cater to just that crowd right now. That crowd is that
yeah,
same crowd is the crowd who expects you to give them parts at half price,
right.
support them. They're not the ones who's spending money. We know that the mature athletes are the where the gravy is in the industry.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But you can see that, Thierry's always been, somebody who can, as an entrepreneur, who can spot opportunity, right? It's like going into these bike shops, not getting the service, like I could do this better, expanding from Alameda to Oakland and all your other ventures, just a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Thanks. Fun.
Yeah. So how did this decathlon position come available?
What's interesting? After Trek purchased the cycle sports, became Trek Oakland.
yeah,
They,
both of you guys sellouts.
I know,
Yeah.
but almost at the same time too.
Right.
Yeah.
We kind of the light bulb went off in both of our heads at the same time. Hey, this is
Right.
an opportunity.
And
Now.
there were a lot of there was a lot of retailers throughout the country, because I had also spoken to somebody in Florida, and she's like, "You got to go." It's like,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We had Specialized at the same time that was interested in the store. I just
Oh,
felt a
okay.
lot more comfortable working with Trek. They just were more, straightforward, direct, and
Much more professional, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Much
I
much
got
more
a
professional.
much better vibe, and okay, we'll call you at 2. They called you at 2.
Hmm.
Specialized, maybe 2. You mean 2 or 2 weeks? It was it was different.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah, so
Patrick.
yeah. Um, so yeah, that so after I sold the store, I don't know if you guys are like me, but you got like a checklist. Hey, when I get some time, I'm going to remodel that bathroom. I'm going to put up 70 feet of fence. I'm going to repaint the living room. So I had a list of like, when I finally have a lot of time, I'm going to do this project. So,
Yeah.
so after I sold the store, I did all these things. I remodeled 2 bathrooms, put up fencing, reorganized the garage. I did all that stuff I've been dying to do, and and then I kind of ran out of stuff to do, and I kind of needed something to do, and my wife's looking at me, goes, "Man, this retirement thing ain't for you. You need to get busy."
Uh,
And a friend of mine was working for Decathlon, and they said, "Hey, they're looking for somebody to create a go-to-market strategy for bikes in the U.S." And I said, "Okay." So I met with them, and I came on as a consultant initially, and created a kind of a model for how they should do things, which is different. They work with a really interesting concept, and I'll explain that in a second. But they uh, just to kind of continue with this. So basically, I came on as a consultant, created a go-to-market strategy, identified strengths and weaknesses, and threats and opportunities, and all that happy stuff. And I kind of created the plan, and I had been working on it. And then all of a sudden, my boss, who was the commercial director, moved to Italy, and they said, "Hey, do you want to take over the commercial director position?" And I was like, okay. And so I kind of fell into this current role that's evolving. I fell into this current role, which has like just more oversight over everything and make a little more decisions. Now back to the company. The company has a really interesting mentality that doesn't jive really well totally with the U.S. bike industry. So they believe that, and this is super admirable. I love this about the company. They believe that everybody should be able to ride a bike. Period. Everybody. So they make everything that they do in their stores, they do in 3 quality levels. They call it 100, 500, and 900. So let me give you a soccer shoes as an example. So if you're going to get soccer cleats, you can get a $25, $30 pair of soccer cleats that are the 100 level. You can get a really good solid pair of soccer cleats, which are the 500 level. Then you get some super pro, trick carbon fiber soled, nutty $300 soccer cleats. So they do 100, 500, 300, and everything, because they believe everybody should be able to do all sports. So they do, and cycling is no exception. And they had focused. So the problem was they have like 8 different bike brands underneath them. The problem was they would take a brand like Rock Rider, and they would have a very entry department store level bike, and they would go all the way to the one Sevilla Blanc is winning the World Cup on. They would separate the brands horizontally, whereas we separate them vertically. If you look at the way Pond does it, you have Cannondale and Santa Cruz as premium, and you have like Schwinn over here, and so we separate brands differently. So it took some doing, and then we decided to focus on our strengths for the U.S. market, which was really focusing on Van Rysel. So Van Rysel is a super premium, really well thought out bike brand, and that hasn't entered the lower market. They're only making 900 level stuff and a few 500 level aluminum bikes. So the emphasis changed within the company of what to do and how to do it, and or is changing. Kind of fun stuff, and you get the kind of you're playing with the house money.
Yeah, that's probably nice for a change, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting. Like when I first got on the website, I was like looking at nano puffs and beanies, and I'm just like, oh, this can't be right. And then but then you go to the menu, it's like, oh, bikes. Okay, here we go. And so it's kind of an interesting, it's kind of like an REI. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, REI, it's kind of like an inverted REI. So it's a lot of the same stuff, type of things. But whereas REI has 20% of their co-op house brand and 80% other brands, we're the other way around. We're 80% our brand and 20% other brands.
Got it.
So, but it's very similar in concept, and and we're close to an IKEA concept as well, because we own most of our factories that make this stuff. So the company's vertically integrated, 105,000 employees. They're in 68 countries right now.
Wow.
And the culture, the people, everyone who works there has worked there for a million years, and it's really kind of cool. If I would have discovered this company 20, 30 years ago, it would have been really interesting. Everyone who's worked there has lived in 5 or 6 different countries. After you've worked in your role for 2 or 3 years, you can just raise your hand and go, hey, you know what? I'd like to move to Ireland. Can I go to Barcelona? And and if there's a similar position for you in one of these other countries, they send a 40-foot container to your house. You get to load it. 30 days later, it's in Barcelona, and you've got to find, and you relocate. So it's like a lot of the people that have been there a long time are kind of like military families, if you know. They don't own a lot of things, probably don't have a lot of pets. The plants are plastic because they could be moving at any time now. It's a lot, but it's kind of cool. I mean, almost everybody talked to. Yeah, I was in Shanghai for 4 years, and then I went to India, and then I was in Lille, and then I spent a little time in it's crazy. I mean, it's a really interesting, dynamic international group, and in Europe, it's the number 2 company to work for, desired to work for. Number 1 company in France. So it's a very interesting place to work, and the people are really intelligent. I'm the oldest guy in the office by at least 10 years, so it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I can relate to the oldest guy. It's funny because when I first started on the road as a rep for GT, I was the youngest dude in the company in sales, in the sales department. And now all these years later, now I'm like one of the old guys. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, But so where are you moving?
It's funny. I probably nowhere in the short term, but now the kids are all grown up and everything else. It's easy to pack up and go, right?
Right.
I wouldn't mind Barcelona. Sounds kind of nice for a couple of years. Are you kidding?
Oh yeah.
Maybe Portugal. Who knows? Everybody's moving to Portugal. Why not go to Portugal?
Yeah,
that's so true, right? Portugal's the go-to spot,
isn't it? Who knows? They have the other cool thing that these guys do is wherever their kind of main design centers and offices, or where a sport is done. So I went on a joint meeting we have offices in Chamonix, right at the foot of Mont Blanc, and literally that's where your office is. They have a water sports thing on a spit of land near Les Sables in France, where on one side is the ocean where they test surfboards. On the other side is a lagoon where they test and build stand-up paddle and sailboats, little sailboats. So it's like, how cool is that? I'll just keep going till the wheels fall off, and then
there you go.
So with the brand Van Rissel, are you involved with the product development of that at all, or is there like a whole bicycle product development team? And then, I mean, how close to that are you?
Sure. No, there's a whole entire team. Each sport has its own physical facility. So where the cycling is in Lille, and it's called B-Twin Village. It's a converted airport and it's huge. I mean, there is huge. The design center is huge. So there's people there that design it. What we offer is input into the market. So example, for the U.S. market, it would be ideal if we had braze-ons for rear racks here, or some kind of a pouch built into the top tube of the frame so we could put tools, or whatever feedback. So market specific feedback is kind of what we do, and then they adapt. They will try to adapt. Chain stay clearance on some tire bikes. Not everybody needs 50 millimeters of clearance on a stay. Some do. What we try to do is give them just specific market feedback. But no, I'm not directly involved with that, or the team, by the way, their team.
Yeah. Is that hard?
Not being involved with the team?
Yeah.
Sometimes I see them doing stupid stuff, and I'm like, oh, come on. I'm like, why are you doing this? I have all the respect in the world for professional athletes. Don't get me wrong, but they treat them like demigods. And for me, they're like, listen, are you creating value? I mean, you are a marketing tool, buddy. Thank you very much. But they're like, no, you can't talk to them that way. We don't want you talking to them directly. No. I need them to show up here, do an appearance for me, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I'm going to I'm going to have cocktails on the team bus when they're not using it. They're like, oh, they really treat it like it's sacrosanct.
Right.
And, my previous point of view was like, hey, there's a lot of respect there, but it's a tool, it's a job, it's meant to achieve a goal, and the goal isn't just, it's more than just winning a race.
Yeah,
you need to create. If you're making an investment, you need to demonstrate how this investment generated value.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, it's fun stuff.
I have a question for you about managing the Continental team and the professional Continental team. Because have you seen you watched the Netflix Least Expected Day?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. So it follows Movistar.
Write it down though.
Yeah, the Least Expected Day. And it's the team Movistar over 3 seasons.
Okay.
And it's just it's a view of the team. I don't know how much of it is produced or if it's authentic or what, but there's just so much nonsense happening. Every episode is just full of like drama, and these guys are just prima donnas, and they don't get along. They all want to be the man, and there's only one, and then they have co-leaders, and then that creates all this drama. And so like when that's like it's really surprising for somebody like myself who's, you think of the world tour, you would think at that level, everything's just so buttoned up. There should be none of that happening, right? It is what I would think just as an outsider. But is that the culture also on a continental team? I mean, obviously you had the one team, but I mean, I think you pulled athletes from these different teams, so you probably have a pretty good sense of what the culture's like. Or is everybody just really focused on like, hey, if they want to race in Europe, we've got to really come together and,
Well, it's different. The culture is different on a pro continental team than a continental team. Continental teams or Division III teams tend to be more regional. You'll tend to have more people from the same area. Chris McGovern from started off with us early on from your town, Chris. So people kind of are more regionally, together and working. There's a whole bunch of reasons that factions exist, and it is kind of the team manager's job to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, sometimes when you get like uber prima donnas, and they're generating results and the sponsors love them, you have to make accommodations you're not willing to make. But you have to set a culture that no one is more important than the team. We learned a lot of stuff working through some of that early on. So at a continental level, that's less of a concern because everybody's scrapping and just trying to, get to the next level, maybe, everybody's working together. There's a pretty clear hierarchy, and there can be huge gaps in a performance at a continental level. It's kind of like college football, right? You can have some guys that are like next level and some guys that are, a little better than typical high school guys, same thing at a continental level. But so everybody rows the boat together in a continental team, typically. If you start bringing in a lot of outside talent, then it's different. But usually the budgets aren't big enough to allow for that. On a pro continental team, everything shifts because now you have to be really conscious of where the athletes are coming from because there's a loyalty. You can't help but if you're in a foreign land and there's three other guys that are like you to kind of develop a bond. And these bonds are sometimes stronger than the bonds of the team, and they will work together. And then sometimes there's some anonymity, as well between some of the cultures. So you have to be super cautious of that. We learned a lot about how to do that. There was years where we have like 6 or 7 Italian guys on the team, and they would almost kind of do their own race. They would do their own training programs. They would ride together. And that's not really what you want, because this guy's a climber, this guy's a sprinter, this guy's a hula. You got a little bit of everything and you need it. So we also, when you negotiate contracts with these athletes, you develop bonuses. And we learned early on that you can't do single person performance bonuses. So, hey, Mike, if you win the sprint and Chris leads you out, you get $10,000 bonus per sprint win that you get. Okay. Can't do that because all of a sudden you're not going to work to help Chris because he's having a better day than you are or whatever. You won't do it because you're out 10 grand. You see it. So what we ended up doing is creating bonuses for team bonuses for overall results of the day. So, everybody who's racing this is the bonus, for a first, a second, a third, or whatever. So everybody works for everybody else. As long as they get it, everybody's splitting up the pie. May not be quite as big, but everybody's rowing the same boat. You can do things like that. Team building, investing a lot of time and energy in team building. What's that old expression? If you haven't seen me drunk or naked, you're probably not my friend. And
not familiar with that one.
I guess we're not friends, Mike.
You rolling with Diddy, are you?
No, but I mean, the idea is you fight a few fires together, you have a little fun, you goof off a little bit, and and
Yeah.
everybody starts to bond a little bit better. But you have to consciously make an effort to do that. And when English isn't your first language and you're racing in America, or you're racing in Italy and Italian's not your first language or whatever, it's challenging to do that. So you have to consciously make an effort to create the bond between the athletes, and you have to motivate as a group, not as an individual. And we found that to be an effective way to, minimize that. There are still guys. There are still guys that we, that will do that. But you do the best you can. But yes, there's a lot of that goes on, and then the prima donna thing is occasionally we would run across a couple, and I don't want to name names, but we had a couple over the years, but we flushed them out pretty quick. When we evaluated athletes for hire, we would have a 10-point scale, and we would only 4 of those 10 points related to the athlete's ability to race. The other 4 was leadership, sponsorship hook, communication ability, leader, just on and on. So we looked at all this other stuff, age, how long does you hang around? So all these other things that played into what we termed the value of an athlete. And that's how we would pay an athlete, compensate an athlete, not just on their ability to race a bike. That was just a small part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Significant, but small.
Yeah, it is interesting. That's a great way to look at it. I think it probably gets a lot harder when you go from Pro Continental to World Tour, because in order to leave Pro Continental, you have to be elite in that level, right? To get to the World Tour or whatever the next stage is. And it's like when you watch that documentary, it'd be fun to circle back with you about this.
All
because man, the prima donna level is insane. And I can't imagine, and like they have these, accomplished directors sportifs, and they're yelling at each other, they're yelling at the team, and the team's yelling at each other, and guys on the team aren't talking to each other. They one year they hate it's Nairo Quintana, and nobody likes this guy, because they all want to be him. They're just so jealous of him and his position, and there's just so many dynamics at play. It's just it's interesting.
It can get toxic. I mean, I've seen it in other ones, but if you allow the factions, also your directors, right? If you have, the Italians will work with the Italian director, but they won't listen to the Belgian director when he gives instructions. So there can be a lot of that. But honestly, if they're too much of a prima donna, teams are businesses, right? And if you have a disruptive employee in your business, you'll put up with some of it. You'll try to work with them to change it, and then eventually you'll have to part ways if you can't rectify it. And that's the same with a team. I mean, no matter how good he is, you can't have him destroy the larger program,
right?
Or if you have, same.
Yeah, well, I think that's true with cycling in general. With beyond the actual ability, we see it with, like, in mountain biking, for example. There's let's say Jeff Lenoski is a great example, right? This is somebody that's been doing professional bike riding for, I don't know, 30 years. And, he's not competing anymore, but he has all those other factors that you're talking about. He's got good leadership. He's very marketable. He's inclusive with everybody. He markets himself a lot, and he does a lot of these other things that basically allow him to keep going on with his bike life, kind of existence. And it's interesting how a lot of people that are in the sport don't really get that dynamic. It's like, man, if you could just be a little bit nicer over here, or if you could learn how to, present yourself in a different way, things could be a lot different than they are. Bottom line results are super important, though. Yeah.
I look at, I love to use Tim Johnson as an example of that. Tim Johnson, what a great guy. Super nice, super friendly, markets himself well, great with sponsors. You can put him in front of a group and he's articulate, pleasant, always positive, versus somebody who's just angry and grumpy and, passes you on a bike and doesn't say anything and looks down and taking it way too seriously. And it's a big difference. Which guy, when they have, the length of career, which guy you think is going to last longer? Of course, it's going to be the guy that has all these other attributes and lends a lot of value and lifts everyone up around him. Just again, the analogy is very similar to any other working environment. So it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. So I see you're doing some cycling now too.
I do. I did a nice little gravel ride yesterday. I get out a couple times a week if I can. I'm I gotta, I like to eat, so I gotta have a way to offset.
It's a huge motivator for us,
right?
Otherwise, No, I try to get out a couple times a week, and if I can, and it was cold as hell yesterday. I don't know where how cold it is where you guys are, but it's cold. Man. But
it's cold.
I was complaining about it to Chris before you came on yesterday. When I took off in the morning, it was 34 degrees.
Whoa! Well, you got me. It was 43 when we left here, and we were all complaining. 34 degrees.
34. Yeah. It's so. I was telling Chris, those chemical warmers.
Yeah.
Like they have toe warmers and hand warmers. So I use all that stuff. I stick the hand warmer in the back of my glove. And, it helps a little bit,
Wow.
Yeah, but my fingers are still ice cold until you hit the climb. As soon as you start climbing, then it's fine,
There you go.
But, yeah, man, you really get tested how bad do you want it, in these colder days, for sure.
You see many people out there?
No. Nobody out there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I did the out here in Livermore. I don't know if you ever done the Patterson Pass loop. It's a real popular loop. You just kind of loop around. But yeah, nobody, not a soul. Yeah. So,
but you get warm going up that climb, but then you got to come down.
You freeze on the way down.
That's horrible.
Yeah. And I'm riding now. I ride in my Patagonia Nano Puff.
Oh, really?
When it's cold like that, yeah. I mean, it gets wet and stuff, but it keeps you warm, and it's not the most efficient cycling thing, but it's warmer than any other cycling thing that I have. So
interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Do what you got to do,
Yeah, absolutely. We had one guy in a puffer jacket riding with us yesterday. So
yeah.
I was like, okay. Not very aerodynamic, but I bet you're more comfortable than any of us.
Yeah.
So how long has Decathlon been in the US for now, T?
So they've been in the U.S. For about 8 years. They started off in is it 8 years? Sorry, maybe 6 years. 6 years. They started off and they opened a warehouse in Oakland. Then they rolled out a store in San Francisco off of Market, and then they did a store in Emeryville. So they tried to take their European model and plug it in here. And what happened is I think they did it at just absolutely the wrong time. They got clobbered by the pandemic. The staffing was a challenge, as we all know.
Right.
And especially in the Bay Area, the cost of living is so high; it's hard to pay a fair living wage. And then the product mix. Trying to understand the U.S. product mix. Is tricky as well. We, especially in this area where we all live, the Bay Area, we like premium stuff. We really, brand names are really important to us. So though they had a really, really broad offer, we weren't really, I think the U.S. market wasn't really familiar with their products. So it took a little while to, that and being clobbered with, the pandemic didn't really do them right. So they made a decision to close the stores, and they've been online only for about 2.5, 3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have a retail footprint anymore. Okay.
Not in the U.S.
Not in the U.S. Yeah.
They have I think 12 stores in Canada. There are stores in Mexico. All everywhere else that they have a facility. Everywhere else is retail. The wholesale business that we're doing is really it's a very new approach, and it's only being tried in a couple different countries.
Yeah, because I visited a Decathlon in Italy.
Yeah.
And that it was interesting because the retail mix on the floor was just not what you'd seen in the US. Like you could find displayed repair parts that might normally be in a bike shop in the back, right? You wouldn't have like brake lever, like a Sarah brake levers on the floor on display, right? But
Right.
in a Decathlon, like that was readily accessible for the consumer to just grab off the
Yeah.
shelf.
Yeah, their model is different. They have a formula that works really well internationally for them. And you can go to Decathlon stores anywhere in the world, and there's like a few different models of stores. There's some inner city, some larger outskirt stores, but you'll see that they all are really similar, carry really similar parts, and they're laid out really similarly. It's again, it's 1,500 stores with an average of 46,000 square feet.
Wow.
So it's a lot of stores. So they know how to do retail really, really, really well. And they're highly automated. There's robots that go up and down the aisles at night and kind of take inventory, and they know what to replenish. It's automatically done, and boom,
Wow.
they send. I mean, it's super automated. They all the checkouts are self checkout. They have a big plastic black bin. You put everything in the bin. It reads all the RFD tags, tells you what your total is, and take it and leave. So you don't really, no one even touches your stuff. So
Wow.
it's pretty clever. They have the retail down. We're in the process of kind of developing systems and learning the wholesale. And that's kind of that's a lot of where my energy is spent right now, kind of setting up wholesale systems. And the bikes are the front runner of establishing that.
Yeah. So are you planning on taking the like Van Rissel to IBDs? Is that the
Yeah,
yeah.
are already done. We're already in about a dozen or so around the country. I think we're only going to do a few, just because we're not bringing a ton of them in. So we're going to do a few IBDs,
Okay.
just kind of get an idea of how to do it right, and then start to roll them out. So we already have them in several IBDs.
Okay.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, I saw the on LinkedIn you had a post from Mexico where it
Yeah,
was like this really dialed presentation of a couple bikes on a wall. It's really, really nice, nicely done.
yeah.
Is that something that you're bringing to the US? I mean, obviously,
No, that was a store in a store. So that
okay,
was kind of like they carve out a section of a store. So not in the near term. That's not something we're probably going to do in the near term in the U.S. because we're not opening up stores in the U.S. So the U.S. will be predominant. And we're trying to build the wholesale business, and then we're focusing on the Decathlon.com. Now, Van Riesel will have its own separate entity. The way it works is there's 4 companies that have been like branched off of Decathlon and are set up as freestanding companies, just own marketing departments, 100% autonomous. And Van Rysel is one of them. So it's
okay,
Van Rysel, Kip Run, Solognac, and one called Simon. They're climbing and outdoor mountaineering gear, which is it's all kind of their super 900 level and 1200 level, even like super premium stuff. So it's just 4 brands, and they're basically imagine they just not literally, but they spun off the company and it's freestanding. And that's where Van Rysel is. So they'll make their own decisions, different go-to-market strategies. So we're in about a couple of weeks, we're going to have our own. It'll be a completely separate website. You won't have to go through puffer jackets and beanies anymore to find it online. It'll be more
right.
with other stuff.
I didn't mind it actually. I was like checking some of that stuff out. I was like, oh, hey, maybe I need a new puffer jacket.
Yeah, I mean the price
Mine's all
points are
sweaty all the
really
time now.
reasonable. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The stuff's reasonable. So with the Van Rysel line, is it road and tri? Is that what it, I mean, is there mountain and other
No,
product as
it's
well?
road, tri, and gravel,
Okay.
and cyclocross as well. And so when we first brought them in last year, we tried a few different things. The gravel bikes are good. They need a little tweaking to be really good for the U.S. market, but they're good quality, good pricing bikes. But we feel the strong suit is the road bikes. The road bikes are actually really nice. I mean, they ride really nice. They're aerodynamically speaking, they're excellent. Carbon layups outstanding. And there's two layups in the bikes. I don't want to make this too much of an ad for you because I don't want to directly compete against your, we found that our strong suit was our road bikes right now, and we're going to focus on the road bikes, and then bring in layer in the other stuff, the gravel and cyclocross, which is about that much of the market in reality, as time goes on. But emphasis on road right now. I mean, really, we're not bringing a ton of bikes into the country. I think it'll be less than 400 bikes for all of 2025. So this is more like dipping our toe in the water, figuring out how to do it right, versus hey, let's roll out in the U.S. No, there's no pressure to sell X number of units or anything. It's like, okay, let's kind of understand what we're doing here and what the dealers want.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a good time to be dipping your toe and not be depending on the market right now. The market's very tough.
Yeah, consolidation for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah. It is cleaning up though, so it is. It's encouraging to see a lot of the inventory is getting cleaned up, and maybe by 2026, maybe we'll be back to business as usual.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start paddling right in the trough. You don't paddle on top of the wave, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're gonna start paddling now, and maybe we'll be up to speed by the time the wave comes.
Yeah, wow, that's a good paddling analogy. I haven't done a lot of paddling myself. Yeah, you do some paddling out there in Alameda?
No, I just like the analogy also.
Oh, right. So when you're saying building out this wholesale model, what is the idea behind that? Where are you hoping to take the products? I'm trying to understand what you mean by that, building out the wholesale model.
So we'll sell. We're going to go to B2B instead of B2C.
Got it.
So we're focusing because keep in mind we manufacture most of this stuff ourselves. So we're going to go B2B instead of B2C. Decathlon makes about 2 million bikes a year. Not all of them are premium. So we do have a little bit of clout in the ability to kind of get components and do stuff. So we're going to leverage that for what we have, and understand it's trying to market and sell it in your own stores is very, very different than creating a product that's competitive against the 200 other brands that are sold in the U.S. So there's a front end system about what you offer the client being the bike shop or the IBD, and there's a back end component to that needs to be built, and that's like your ERP system, the whole data interface, inventory, invoicing, dealer-based accounting system, your warranty management, all this stuff on the back end that you don't see that needs to be kind of organized and put in place that we're doing right now. And that's why we're not in a hurry to do it. We kind of want to make sure we do it right. And the first few dealers that will open up, first 25 or so, we're really calling them partner dealers. The approach is like, hey, listen, we're kind of new to town. We know we're going to mess some stuff up. We just want to be really communicative so that we could set it up correctly, fix it, do it right. So give me some feedback. We'll give you guys great pricing, great terms, and great product. But we won't be perfect. Just know that, but know that the phone lines are always open, and we want to fix it. And this is why we're doing this. So that's kind of the way we're coming at it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, especially if that's where who you partner with really becomes important, right?
For sure.
You want to get that good feedback so you can make these little tweaks as you're setting things up.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm sure with your background in the bike business, all those years, what was it, 30 some odd years? 31 years. Yeah. So, you've certainly seen your share of distribution models and, companies that you like to work with, companies that you were less inclined to do so, and some of the factors in those decisions,
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Cool. Well, man, so it's interesting, this company, like Chris at least had been to one of the stores. But I know, like, I never even heard of it before. Like when I pulled you up on LinkedIn, I saw that Decathlon. I was like, oh, what's this? And and so it's been and then to find out how big a company it really is, this global brand. Very cool.
Well, they had a professional team at one point. Is that
Yeah, they
true?
did in we do again, right? But in
Oh,
yeah, in the '91,
okay.
yeah, they had uh, we made a bike, and yeah,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that.
Because the name is like, it's a name that could be applied to a bunch of different things, right? Decathlon, there's a lot of different decathlon, right? That's an event in the Olympics. There's decathlon's like a
Right.
lot of different things. So I didn't know that the race team was associated with this company even. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
yeah. There's a huge anywhere, almost everywhere else in the world. It's a super well known brand. Here, no one's heard of it. So it's pretty funny, and trying to adopt their culture is is really interesting. Some of my days are spent and I'm by no means a copywriter, but when they're describing these premium RCR team edition race bikes, and they're trying to put it in the website, I have these really amusing blowouts with the European counterparts. So they'll take a look and they'll write the text for this super cool high mod carbon bike, and they'll say the bike is playful and joyful to ride. And I have to call them. I go, hey, Maxine, we cannot say the bike is playful and joyful, right? We're not selling puppies. We're selling bicycles.
All right.
No, Thierry, we
Yeah,
must
right.
say playful or joyful, one of the words in the description. It's mandatory. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
So, but for them, it makes sense the way they
Uh-huh.
say it, the way they explain it,
Sure.
and so you got to kind of keep them in check. No, we're not going to say it's playful and joyful to ride.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of common too. Like my experience sometimes with giant bicycles, right? You'd have the folks come over from Taiwan and they're like, "Why aren't you selling all these tires?" It's like nobody knows about your tires.
Right. Yeah. 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 It is.
Like the disconnect,
There's definitely
Yeah.
a disconnect. Even, a brand like Giant is obviously it's much more successful in the United States,
Sure.
and but there's still like a big culture dynamic between Giant USA and Giant GU.
But
So
not at
it's
the
like,
same level like internationally, right? Like Giant International, in other markets is much, much stronger than it is in the US as an example, right? It's just
yeah,
not
yeah.
doesn't
I
ring a
mean,
bell here.
that's fair to say for sure. But it's like I traveled with this team from Taiwan one time, and we went to in San Francisco. They wanted to go to San Francisco. We were doing this. They had this KOM challenge in Taiwan, and they had partnered with the Taiwan Tourism Bureau, and there was a San Francisco agent that was a partner in this. So they had these two free passes to the KOM challenge, and they wanted to go visit the bike shops and get the bike shops to promote the idea of tourism to Taiwan. And this KOM challenge was part of the thing, but also they were evaluating our brand penetration at each retailer, and the same kind of thing. Chris has had visitors to his store over the years where they just don't understand. Like, well, where are all the helmets? How come we don't have helmets on they've got 40 helmets on the wall. There's not, where's the Giant helmets? It's like, well, it's like, helmets are really a tough category, and, so yeah, they don't understand necessarily. I do feel like, if in Taiwan and China and in that part of the world, I feel like you could take just about anything, like a cell phone case, put giant on it, and it'd probably make it more marketable.
Really?
Yeah, there's definitely
Mhm.
that kind of energy that you get from Taiwan, where it's like, oh, well, this is a giant. This is giant. Like it should be perceived
Right.
as better. And we make some great products, but it's just hard to compete with the U.S. culture, like you were talking about with the, you know, not having that brand prestige, right? Like a Patagonia, for whatever reason, Patagonia's done a lot of different things, and their brand is like elevated because of those things. And you may have something that's equally, maybe even better in some respects, but trying to sell it to that customer that wants that Patagonia is very tricky. And that's kind of Giant's challenge in the United States, because the brand is not really, even though the products are really good, it's tough. Branding, the USA is tough, man.
Yeah,
Build that brand.
that's a big thing. People, brands carry a lot more importance in the U.S. than they do almost anywhere else in the world. In France, if you were to put a Patagonia jacket next to a Decathlon jacket, you would probably have the person flip over the tag, see what it's made of, see what kind of downfill you have, and on and on and on, and then make a determination on which is the best item. They don't really care so much about the brand. Here, we would just default to the brand that we trust. There's a lot of trust associated with a premium brand because everything else I bought this Patagonia has been great. But I've never heard of this one. So I'm way more comfortable buying this one. It's the psychology behind it's fascinating. We are super brand centric compared to anywhere in the world. And we don't even realize that we're brand centric. We think everybody is the same way. And they're not. They'll sit there and flip the tag over, look at it. They'll promote the attributes and the material buildup of the other stuff. And we're like, yeah. But that one's Patagonia. Overcoming that's a really big challenge when you're dealing with a foreign company that doesn't have the same value system. So we spend a bit of our time saying, hey, this is what the U.S. consumer wants and needs and does. And then trying to create a way of conveying the message and creating affinity with the brand. So that's a big part of the wholesale game. Is you don't have a salesperson there explaining and telling the person what's going on. You need to do it through your marketing.
Yeah, it is interesting. I spent for a lot of years I was going to Whistler, to the on the mountain bike, just riding Whistler Mountain for Crankworks or whatever else, just having fun up there, But I got to connect with Giant Canada, and it's a small operation, but it was really refreshing. It's like in Canada, the product is really based on the merit of the product. It's like it doesn't really matter the brand necessarily, and we have really good products. So Giant Canada, it's just so different talking to them about like you talk to the team over there, it's like, oh yeah, well, of course we own Whistler Mountain. Of course, everybody wants to ride Giant up here, because we have the best stuff and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, we have the same best stuff down in Northern California.
Right.
And, it's like, it's not the same, so it is. That's really refreshing and cool. And it seems like other countries, in a sense, are a little bit more involved in that regard, where they're more pragmatic about their purchasing, not so much of a slave to a brand necessarily.
Correct.
But, I think also people get caught up. Let's just stay with Patagonia, for example, right? I think people get to where, let's say you buy this product, you kind of like it, and then you follow it a little bit, and then maybe some people go deep dive. They find out who owns it. The guy wrote a book. Oh, I'll read this book. And it gets like a lot more personal than just like I'm going to I need a jacket, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to get the best possible jacket at the best price type of thing. So I don't know. It's like you said, it's a lot more complex.
Yeah, it's not just bring it, sell it, boom. It's
right.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the thing, like from your perspective, the thing that I could see is, obviously huge benefit having this massive company behind you, right? It's not like you're trying to start from scratch with some me too kind of products. That's not it at all. You got this huge enterprise behind you, and you just got to try to push the right buttons to make it happen.
They made the investment in a World Tour team, right? So they're writing a big old check, and Van Rysel under the Decathlon AG2R team this year, next year. Netflix documentaries coming out, like the whole, how they follow things. So next year it's going to be on the one you see for season 3, I guess, or 4, whatever it is. Will be on our bikes with our team last year. So it'll be, so they're, you can't afford to do that if you're small. That's right. Those were all big dollar investments. So it does give us a leg up in that sense, in a global sense. And cycling really is global in so many ways. There's not a whole bunch of racing that's going on over here anymore. So we look internationally for our race inspiration.
Yeah. Now you said this is season 4 of The One You See. Is that what did I hear that right?
No, the Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
The one that's been coming, the one that they did with Jonas Vingegaard and
Oh, okay, like the Tour de France Unchained series.
yeah, Tour de France.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome. So we'll have to look for that.
That should be coming up.
Yeah.
So
All
that'll
right.
be a good little pop in the arm for us. Hopefully, we'll see.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
the idea for the short term is just to have people see the product. Get out there, see it, get feedback from the dealers. We're not going to do there's no massive rollout coming on, or anything like that.
Yeah. Do you know the inner workings of that Netflix deal?
No.
Like last year was, Jumbo Visma largely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how they pick and choose these little. I wonder if they're capturing it from all the teams' perspective, and then they just kind of put it together. But it sounds like it's maybe a little bit preordained, right? Like you're talking
Yeah,
like
we've known this for a while, so I'm assuming they got permission and imagery, and there's each athlete now kind of has an image and license agreement in place. So before they can use that athlete's image, this stuff has to be kind of marked out way in advance, at least for the insight parts. Maybe general race scenes they'll go through an organizer, but no, I think this is all preset. I don't think they capture everybody, then later focus on somebody. I think they know going into it that it's going to be a focus on one team, and then they build around that, the story around that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, these past few years have just been incredible. Watching the World Tour with Pogača and Jonas, and and then Wout and Vanderpool. I mean, man, it's just
these guys are in another planet, and it's kind of nice that you have other guys that are really good at different specialities, but except for not Jonas, but Pogača, who's freaking good at everything, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unreal. I don't know if you saw, there was like a viral clip of him talking about his zone 2 days where he likes to stay in zone 2 for 5-hour rides at about 340 watts.
Zone 2.
It was like, what planet are you on, man?
All right.
Yeah.
Zone 2 at 540 watts.
No, 340.
What, a buck 30 maybe? Buck 40?
Yeah.
Right.
Unreal. Yeah, he was talking to this guy, Dr. Peter Attias, and he's a cyclist himself, but he's a doctor. And anyway, so he was just like, wait, so you're saying zone 2 for 5 hours at 340? And it was just like, he's like, for those of you listening that don't understand, that's insane. Yeah, it was pretty cool, but unreal. Wow. We get a little sense of it when they used to have the Tour of California through, we would get a sense of it, because I remember I rode up to Diablo and right at the junction during the tour, and it was so bizarre because I think Rohan Dennis and Lawson Craddock were off the front that day, and they came kind of through, but then the whole peloton comes through, and that turn at the junction, it gets really, it's sharp and it's steep right there.
Yeah,
these guys are all big ringing it, chit chatting. It was just like, who big rings it right here? I mean, it just like the whole thing was just like, man, these guys are just different level. It's just a whole different ball game, I haven't ridden with anybody. Well, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I've ridden with a few crazy talented, powerful people, but yeah, it's wild when you see it firsthand, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had Floyd Landis on the team one year in 2009, and he would the first when he was with us that year at training camp, he's different.
Yeah.
And he would drink a gallon of milk. That whole gallon of milk challenge. That dude would drink a gallon of milk before he'd do the ride. Then he would take the rest of the riders out. And these were still, at the time, it was still a bunch of guys. Most of the team work. Actually, it was 50-50. We had some really good talent on that year and some like guys coming up. And he would literally take them on an 8-hour, 300-watt day. Like, and they would come back and they would just be like, absolutely knackered. And like, well, what are we going to do tomorrow? And they're like, man, we there's no way we're starting till noon. This guy was just from another planet, and the way he was able to suffer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's definitely a skill in knowing how to suffer. That's for sure. You see it with even guys that are past their prime, that maybe have taken on some extra weight, but they still know how to suffer. They could still bring it, it's kind of interesting. So when you had the team, I mean, that was kind of at the height. You mentioned Floyd, right? Obviously Floyd had his drug.
Yeah, we didn't know when we hired him. We hired him, and he was going to come off that year in I don't know, February or something was going to be the end of the thing. And back then, half the people thought, no, he's innocent. Half the people thought, no, he's not. It was like a 50-50 split. So we interviewed. We had a couple good conversations, and he's first of all, the guy is really intelligent, and people don't really give him credit for that. The guy's really smart. He just has a different upbringing or whatever. And he super motivated, and he attracted a lot of attention to the team in a year we needed it. That 2009 year was a really hard transition year. We didn't know if we were going to fold or go or not or what. And what ended up happening was we were kind of like fishing around for sponsors. And then I get a call from Floyd as I'm driving to the grocery store, and I got 2 kids in the car. Hey, Thierry, this is Floyd Landis. And I'm like, whoa, Floyd, hey, how are you? Wow. We chat a little bit, and he goes, I'm interested in coming back. I need a good team with good equipment, product, people to support me. And I think I can help you raise the rest of the money. And I was like, wow, okay. And so we start talking, and he goes, and I don't want to get paid. He raced for free that whole entire year.
No kidding.
He didn't want to get paid.
Wow.
But he wanted to help us raise money just so he could relaunch his career. And so he made a couple phone calls to guys he knew that had a lot of money. And all of a sudden I started getting $250,000 commitments left and right. All over the place. So we go to national championships that they were in Greenville, I think, North Carolina at the time. And we go to George Hincapie's house, and we're sitting on the couch, and there's this one guy, the Floyd supporter, and I won't say his name, but he's sitting there and I knew we were going there to pitch him for money to raise to get the team going. He lays back on the couch. He goes, Floyd, these guys are going to be able to support you? And Floyd goes, yeah, they're going to be able to support me. He goes, you're going to have good equipment? Floyd goes, yeah, we're going to have good equipment. Then he slides so I had brought he goes, do you have anything for me to sign? And I go, yeah. So I had kind of pre-done a 1-pager. Usually our contract's like 15 pages, but I knew I better make it quick and dirty, and slid it across the table to this guy. And he hands it to his wife. He doesn't have his reading glasses, and he goes, how does that look? He goes, that looks fine. So he signs it, and it took me like 11 minutes to nail that. Wow. Because Floyd's like saying, yeah. So he helped us raise the money that year, and that kept us going. The next year, we went to United Healthcare and then made the jump up to Division II, which was significantly more expensive, but without Floyd. Floyd was he was fantastic. He would people love hearing him talk. Except we'd take him to a school or something, and he'd be dropping, or a corporate event, and he'd be dropping F-bombs like they were going out of style. You're like, we're dealing with health insurance, which is very, very white shoe. They love him. He was totally entertaining, and his stories were like the best in the world. But we're like, okay. I go, okay, Floyd, if you're coming back next year, here's some cue cards. Here's what you can, I'm going to rewrite a couple speeches. Yeah. And he goes, if that works for you, you're on board. And he's like, and he just looked and goes, nah, I don't think so. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's cool to get that background.
Absolutely classic. Super talented, really funny. Good dude.
When you were running the team, I mean, what were you concerned? I mean, at obviously at the world tour level, there was like this whole period where that was a pervasive thing, right? This drug thing was
Yeah.
just happening everywhere. What at the continental level was? I mean,
Well, at the pro continental level, the Division II level, it can be done pretty good too. First of all, doping programs, if it's a team sponsored program, it's really expensive to do. And
mhm.
we didn't have much budget, so we weren't really in a position to do it. Not that we would, of course, but
Sure.
that really wasn't an option. And and yes, we were concerned. Yes, we had internal testing. We had external testing. We had team doctors that were always checking in on athletes. Anything that happened, you know, so we were worried on more of an individual basis. We did certain things to try to mitigate it, like you split up the rooming. You don't let people room together all the time. You have different roommates all the time because
Hmm.
maybe Bob and Joe know each other and trust each other, and then so now you're continuously mixing it up so that way you'll get somebody to tell you, because everyone knew we had a health insurance company, United Healthcare, the last few
Right.
years as a sponsor, and all their contracts were one doping violation, we can cancel the contract. So if somebody dopes, nobody's getting paid anymore. You guys
Mm.
you're all out of a job, period.
Yeah.
So you don't want that guy next to you doing something that he shouldn't be doing, because it'll cost you your job. So there was a bit of self-policing that went on in that regard.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
It
yeah,
is it's a can of worms too, really. I mean,
huge can of worms. It's a huge
yeah.
can of worms. There's a really good book that was written. I'm trying to think of the name. Um, and it talks about the propensity to dope and why. So let's pretend you're a farmer in Colombia and you can ride a bike. We've had a couple of those,
Yeah.
and you can ride a bike like nobody's business. Okay, you're making $10,000 a year as a farmer. You can live pretty good, and you're doing fine. But if you can make it to the pro continental ranks, minimum salary, you're going to make is like $70,000 a year, 70 grand a year. Okay,
Yeah.
minimum. Um, if you dope for 1 year, or that year that you make the transition, or you start doping, and you make the team, you got a 7x return on what you're likely to ever make. So the mathematics behind it are like, okay, I'll take a chance. And if I get in there, I'm at least making 70 grand for a year, or
Hmm.
not, or before they, or two, or maybe once I get there, I will train better. I will eat better. I will become better. You sell yourself. So is it okay for them to do that? You look at it morally, of course not.
Right.
Legally, of course not. Financially, if you're just making a straight business decision, 7x return on what your cost of living, I can send money back home. I could build a house with this. I can do all this stuff with just the difference between the 10 grand I would typically make or the $70,000. So mathematically, there's this motivation, not to necessarily to cheat, but to have a better standard of living, because we're used to, okay, 70 grand is good. It ain't going to change my world, but it's fine. Them, oh my God, it's 7x what you're making now.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. The other ones that you worry about a little bit too are the declining athletes. They say that you will be the best you will ever be as a cyclist when you're 30. You might retain that top level till you're about 34, and typically you start to go. So you up here, maybe you plateau, and then you come back down. So the ones you worry about are the ones on the way down that don't have a plan B, the cyclists that didn't get an education, that have no other choice but to try to continue this career as long as they possibly can. You start to you don't doubt them. You just think there's a higher possibility that they would want to extend their careers in ways that they should. So you take maybe a little harder look at that. And then certain cultures, cycling, as you know, like like Italians, it's a religion. It's not a sport, man. It's
Yeah.
hell, they got shrines made up to cycling. So it literally, if you meet in the cycling world at the professional level, when you meet people there, they don't introduce you hi, this is Chris Padavana. This is, hi, this is Chris Padavana, who took third in the Giro in 1958. And, that becomes part of your name. Your cycling accomplishments become part of your name. So, if it's that important, do you roll?
As it should be. As it should be, I think. Hey, this is Chris Padavana. He got third at the Cherry City crit.
Becomes part of your name.
Right.
Yeah. Well, with the doping thing, did you happen to see that Netflix thing, Icarus?
I did.
Yeah. So
that's kind of scary.
It's really interesting, right? I mean, there's a lot of things about that documentary, and I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but one of the things was the guy didn't do any better.
Yeah,
he did a whole doping program for a year, and he didn't do better.
Right.
So it's not like it's a guarantee necessarily. I guess there's a lot of factors in that, but it is weird with, you have PEDs, and then you have ketones. And you have it's like this really funny line that's drawn where like everybody's looking for that extra advantage, right? Whether it's recovery or better sleep or better performance on the bike is a goal. And there's all these products that are supplements that are not PEDs. And then at some point your supplement can become a PED. And it is kind of interesting, the whole dynamic with it. It's just I can see how you could get caught up in it as an athlete trying to take yourself to the next level. I mean, I could understand everyone wants to make these, like you mentioned, moral judgments on people, but it's like, you know what, the people making those judgments are not in the athlete's shoes at the time. And it's not like I don't condone it necessarily, but I understand how you could get caught up. Certainly, you're close to just taking that next step or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, and there's a fine line between why is this legal and this not legal. So I'll give you a really interesting example. We were sponsored by Cytomax for a lot of years. They made great stuff, really nice people, very supportive, and there was no intent to do anything wrong. They developed a product called Vasostat, and it was a vasodilator. And I don't know if you've ever and they later made mixed it into a drink format as well. And so when they first came out, they gave it to us. We were the first people to try it and test it and use it. And I got to tell you, I brought some home one day, and I was going to teach my kids how to hit a baseball. And I drank a bunch of this stuff. It kind of tastes like Cytomax. And hot day, we were going to go out to the park and spend the day. I slam a bottle of this stuff. I swear to God, man, it was like I had 40 cups of coffee. I was like, hit the ball, hit the ball. And you're like gnawing your teeth. And I was talking to the athletes, and they go like, oh yeah, this stuff's crazy. We would do a criterium, and it would require no warm up. And it was so intense that you could your pupils were dilated for 2 hours after you drank it. Wow. Every capillary in your body, everything was wide open right away. So it required no exertion to kind of expand your capillaries and veins. This stuff was insane. It was like, I don't do drugs, but I'm assuming it was something that, crack like or something, it was, oh my God. And it opens you up immediately. And you're thinking like, how is this stuff legal?
Right.
And it was just a vasodilator. Immediately, every vein and artery in your body was dilated to full max for like 2 hours. So in a criterium, when you had the go. I'm not attributing it to the team's criterium success over the.
Of course not.
Yeah. But it was like, oh my God, you're wide open. But then after 2 hours you crash. But it's okay for like 2 hours you are just full gas. You're like, I can't believe something like this is okay to take when Yeah.
Well, yeah, like a lot of these over-the-counter supplements are wild, and then everybody's trying to do the same thing. It's just some will take it to an extreme level,
Yeah, it's the nature of an athlete, right? What can I do to be better, faster, stronger, get ahead, recover?
Yeah.
So you're looking for it, and where's that line? And I guess the UCI tells you where that line is.
Yeah. We had a family in Livermore, the Prado family, Mauricio and Manuel Prado, and Mauricio got a contract to go. He's a young kid to go race in Spain with Team Shackley, and everybody in town was super proud of the Prados were their exemplary family, and everybody was super proud of Mauricio getting this opportunity. And he came back 3 weeks later, and he said that the team had a whole doping protocol, and he wasn't willing to do it, so they sent him home. And
Wow.
it was really impressive to see a young kid that's chasing his dream, and to take that kind of stand against it.
Good for him. Yeah.
Yeah, not sure that many others would do the same, but yeah. So even back, that wasn't like a world tour team by any stretch, But he said it was so obvious that when they go on these training rides and the type of workouts that they were doing, it was like everybody was just extra. There was just a lot of, and he's a rider that had been to the Olympic Training Center on multiple occasions, and had a real high level understanding of what was capable, and then what he was experiencing when he was in Spain. Yeah, but
Wow.
many of us wonder if that's still a thing. I'd hoped that sports cleaned up.
I honestly think in the latter years, 2018 was the last year I had the team, but I really think that it has evolved a lot. Athletes have gotten a lot more intelligent. The whole "my body is a temple" kind of concept, people understand, or are starting to understand more what the long-term effects, or even the short-term effects of doping are, and how they'll affect you. So I genuinely think that it's a lot less prevalent than it used to be. Or as before, people would just people are trying to do it right. There's probably, whereas before maybe 30% of the people were doing it, and now I'm guessing that it's 3 to 5 or something like that if they get away with it. But again, it's the ones that either on the trying to get in or trying to extend a career are the ones that are most likely. But I don't think that it's as, my guess would be, and I don't have any direct knowledge, would be that it's a lot less prevalent than it was then.
Well, I sincerely hope so, for the sake of the sport. Another scandal would be terrible for the sport, obviously. And then also the athletes, you want them to live long, healthy lives. And, you don't know when you introduce some foreign chemical into your body, like we all did during COVID. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
You're not Joe Rogan.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. All right. Well, Thierry, man, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning to join us at Cycle Jerks, and it's really good catching up with you again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good fun, guys. Good fun.
Yeah, wish you nothing but success with Decathlon and your B2B venture.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Good to catch up and see you again.
Yeah,
it's good
absolutely.
to see you, Thierry.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Yep.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.